3 years after Julian's death, a man who looked exactly like him was brought back from the underbelly of the city. Liam had found him, a ghost in a place of ghosts, and decided he would be the perfect substitute. He would be trained, meticulously, to become the lover Liam had lost. He told him to stop eating shellfish. Julian had despised it. He was instructed not to call him by his first name. Julian never had. Liam would ask him, almost pleadingly, to just be good. He reminded the man how much he looked like him, a promise that he would not be discarded. Liam treated him as nothing more than a suitable replacement, a vessel for memory. Until one night, in the heavy stillness of his bedroom, the man who should have been sleeping beside him suddenly clamped a hand around his throat. His voice was a venomous whisper. "You liar. Didn't you say you'd only love me for the rest of your life? I'm dead for 3 damn years and you go find a stand-in. No matter how much someone looks like me, they aren't me. Liar." The 7th year of their life together was the year Julian died. There was no body, not even ashes. Just one of his lieutenants, pulling up to the curb in a black town car, his face a granite mask. He handed Liam a silver pocket watch, the last thing Julian had touched. The man's condolences were delivered flatly, a request for Mr. Hayes to accept his sympathies. Liam maintained his cold composure, his face betraying nothing as he took the watch. He remembered the day Julian left. He'd already been at the front door, ready to leave for that trip, when he'd turned back. He had cupped Liam's face in his hands and pressed a soft kiss to his forehead. He'd said he was really leaving then. Julian's eyes, dark as polished obsidian, had reflected the dim light of the entryway. He had slowly run a hand through Liam's hair, asking if he would miss him. Liam had always been difficult. His affections locked away unless it was late at night, the lights were off, and passion stripped away his inhibitions. It was nearly impossible for him to voice words like love, or miss, or want. So he had turned his face away, his tone clipped. He told him no, there was nothing to miss. It was just a business trip, 2 or 3 days at most. They were grown men. There was no need for such cloying sentiment. So cruel, Julian had sighed with a smile, a flicker of genuine and feigned disappointment in his eyes. He said it was fine. He didn't press the issue, just leaned in, his cool, soft lips barely grazing the corner of Liam's mouth. He had whispered that it was all right if Liam didn't miss him, because he would miss Liam. He told him to wait at home, that he'd be back soon. He'd be back soon. He never came back. Liam stared at the watch resting in his palm. It was the birthday gift he'd given Julian last year. He remembered how pleased Julian had looked, wrapping an arm around Liam's waist from behind, resting his chin on his shoulder. He toyed with the watch with his free hand, then, like a playful wolf, had nipped at Liam's neck. He'd murmured about how beautiful it was, that he loved it and loved Liam, and that Liam was even more beautiful. Liam hadn't turned around as Julian's hand moved up, skillfully undoing the top button of his shirt. Now, less than a year later, that same watch had returned to him as the sole relic of Julian's existence. His heart felt as though it were being pierced by 1,000 tiny needles, a fine, sharp ache spreading through his chest. He bit his lower lip unconsciously, tasting the metallic tang of blood. After a moment, he looked up at Julian's man and offered a chilling smile. He asked what there was to be sorry for. Julian was dead, so what? He paused, feigning genuine confusion, and asked if it was really something worth grieving over. No one had expected such a venomous response. No one got the satisfaction of seeing a single crack of sorrow on his face after Julian's death. He had long perfected the art of the mask. The men exchanged uneasy glances, their surprise visible, but they said nothing more. They bowed slightly, turned, and drove away. After that day, Liam sealed the watch away, never looking at it again. He drifted through the next 3 years. During gatherings with friends or business partners, the topic of Julian would inevitably surface. Some, emboldened by liquor, would comment on Liam's apparent heartlessness. They'd say they didn't understand that kind of relationship between two men, but 7 years was a long time. For him to die in a crash like that, and for Liam to show not a single sign of distress, it seemed unnatural. He was distressed. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Julian. Every dream was haunted by him, but on the surface, he remained a statue. He'd take a sip of his bourbon and casually remark on what there was to be sad about. He and Julian, he'd lie, had only been together for business. He'd say it was a good thing Julian was dead. The statement always landed like a stone, silencing the room. Liam would let a smirk play on his lips, clinking his glass against another's before draining the last of the amber liquid. He would talk about how much freer he was now, without someone constantly breathing down his neck, getting jealous if he so much as glanced at another attractive man. He'd laugh, a hollow sound, and ask them if they understood how liberating it was. And besides, he'd add, Julian had left behind a considerable fortune. It would be a shame to waste time grieving when there was so much money to appreciate. The air would grow thick with unspoken judgment. Liam would survey the room, knowing that as soon as these people left, the rumors would fly. That Liam Hayes had despised Julian Pierce all along, that he'd only endured the relationship for the money and power. That Julian's accidental death was the best thing that could have happened to him. After a long, stiff silence, someone finally broke the tension, slapping a hand on the table. They'd agree that it didn't matter, real or fake, the man was gone. No point in dwelling on the past. An older business partner turned to him, suggesting a trip to the gray sector tomorrow. He mentioned there were plenty of beautiful boys there, offering to take Liam along to pick one out if he saw someone he liked. Liam glanced at him but didn't bother to reply, simply reaching for another drink. He hadn't expected the man to be so proactive. The next day, he was practically dragged along on the trip to the gray sector, a sprawling, unregulated underground market on the city's fringe where anything and everything was for sale. Upon arrival, he was led to see the beautiful boys he'd been promised. It was a wasted effort. Liam had never been interested in any man besides Julian. He looked at a few, offered a polite excuse about them not being his type, and feigned disinterest. The man was perceptive enough not to push. Liam nodded his thanks, his mind already elsewhere, sorting through work emails on his tablet. Just as they were about to leave, as he packed up his device, a figure in a distant corner caught his eye. The man was tall but emaciated, his dark hair long and unkempt. His body was a roadmap of scars and bruises, his clothes so tattered they barely offered coverage, let alone warmth. To anyone else, he was just another broken soul, a piece of human wreckage not worth a second glance. No one would ever connect this ghost to the once brilliant and magnetic Julian Pierce. But Liam knew Julian too well. They had shared 7 years, an entire lifetime of intimacy. The air seemed to freeze, his own heartbeat skipping a beat. He took an involuntary step toward the corner, then forced himself to look away, pretending he'd noticed nothing. Half an hour later, Liam made an excuse and separated from the group, driving back to the gray sector alone. The man was still there. Liam walked over and crouched in front of him. The man lifted his head, and Liam found himself looking into a pair of eyes identical to Julian's. Nowhere to go, huh? Liam raised a hand, his fingers tracing the sharp line of the man's jaw. Then you'll come with me, all right? He knew his actions were audacious. To touch a stranger like this, to command him to come with him without any preamble, should have earned him a fight. But the young man showed no reaction. His gaze was fixed on Liam, yet profoundly empty. After a few silent moments, Liam spoke again. I'm asking you a question. Are you mute? Say something. He tightened his grip on the man's chin, forcing his head up slightly. Come back with me. Can you do that? This time the silence stretched even longer. The man remained passive, unresisting and unresponsive. Liam was the first to break. He sighed. Fine. You don't have to answer. It's not up to you anyway. I'm taking you home. You don't have a choice. He was too much like Julian. The eyes, the bridge of his nose, his lips. It was as if he'd been cast from the very same mold. Letting anyone else see him would undoubtedly cause complications. In the eyes of the world, Julian Pierce was dead. Time was of the essence, and Liam trusted no one. So he drove for a day and a night, bringing the young man from the city's edge back to his penthouse. The man was surprisingly docile. He spent the entire journey huddled quietly in the back seat, saying nothing. Occasionally, he would rest his head against the window and drift off, and when he was awake, he simply stared out at the passing landscape. Liam pulled over at a rest stop for a break. He angled the rearview mirror to study the man in the back. Seeing that face, a perfect copy of Julian's but devoid of any emotion, he was struck by a thought. The real Julian would never have let him drive for a full day without rest. He would have worried himself sick if Liam had missed a single hour of sleep or skipped a meal. It had been 3 whole years since he'd heard Julian's voice. "Hey," Liam said suddenly, turning around. His voice was low. "Can you talk? You're not actually mute, are you? Can you give me some kind of sign?" He hadn't really expected a response. It was just an impulse. But this time, the young man pulled his gaze from the window and looked at him. His lips moved, forming a weak, barely audible sound. "Can talk." In that instant, Liam felt his heart stop. Even his voice was like Julian's, only lighter, raspier. Years of boardroom negotiations had taught him to mask his emotions. He quickly composed himself. "You can. That's good," he said. "Right? You don't have a name, do you?" Most people in the gray sector, other than buyers and sellers, didn't. He said, "With deliberate cruelty, we'll call you Jude." Then he saw it. A flicker of something, a spark of recognition in the young man's eyes before it vanished. The young man lowered his head. "Give me your hand," Liam commanded. He seemed confused but obediently extended his left hand. Liam thought, if only you'd been this compliant before. A faint, humorless smile touched his lips. He took the man's scarred hand, carefully avoiding the worst of the wounds, and used his fingertip to trace 2 words into his palm. "This is your name now," he said softly. "Jude."
Jude.
Jude was filthy from head to toe. The first thing Liam did when they got back to the penthouse was to push him into the master bathroom's oversized tub. Steam from the hot water filled the air, clouding the mirrors. Liam reached for Jude's tattered shirt, but Jude's hand shot up to stop him. Jude looked at him and whispered that he could do it himself. "Fine." Liam had no desire to force the issue. He nodded and stepped back. "I'll get you a change of clothes." In truth, the master closet was still half filled with Julian's clothes. Any of them would have fit. But Liam lingered there for a long time before turning to leave. He was trying to recall the small details of Julian's body. The scar on his shoulder. The tiny mole just below his collarbone. The one on his lower back. He cut the thought short. He couldn't think about that. He slammed the closet door, grabbed a set of clothes, and went back to the bathroom without knocking. It was intentional. Jude was clearly startled by his abrupt return. He sank deeper into the water, only his head and a length of his neck visible above the surface. His voice was sharp with surprise and anger. "What are you doing in here?" That flash of irritation, Liam noted, made him look even more like Julian. "Bringing you clothes," Liam replied, his gaze deliberately strange. "Are you planning on walking out of here naked?" Jude's anger subsided as the logic sank in. He couldn't, of course. "Thank you," he stammered, reaching for the clothes. As he leaned forward, Liam's eyes fell on his shoulder and neck. There it was. A very faint, thin scar. Liam had made that mark himself during a moment of passion long ago. It was so fine that Julian himself had probably never noticed it. How could 2 people in the world exist with the same height, the same face, the same voice, and even the same marks on their skin? This had to be Julian. Liam feigned indifference, avoided Jude's hand, and placed the clothes on a nearby rack before turning to leave. The next morning at the breakfast table, Liam asked him if he knew why he had been brought here. Jude was reaching for a glass of milk in the center of the table. He retracted his hand and shook his head. Liam pushed a glass of warm milk toward him. "Because you look like someone I loved." He watched as Jude's eyes widened in surprise. "He's dead," Liam continued. "We were very close before he left. Even though I rarely told him I loved him or anything like that, the truth is I did. I was with him since I was 18, for 7 years, until he died." Liam offered a small, cold smile. "I've never been able to forget him. And you look so much like him." He saw the man across from him tense up. "You don't have to go back to the gray sector," Liam said. "A home, cars, money, a job, status. Anything you want, I can give you. I only have one condition. You will stay by my side, as my lover. And when you are with me, you will do your best to imitate him. His mannerisms, his habits, even what he ate and drank." Of course, he paused, looking directly into Jude's eyes. "I don't like to force people. This is entirely voluntary. If you don't want to," his voice was ice, "you can get the hell out of here right now." He'd said he didn't like to force people. That was a lie. If Jude had dared to say he was leaving, Liam would have had him in iron chains and locked in a room before he could take a single step. He was never letting him go again. Fortunately, the chains weren't necessary. Jude stared at Liam's face for a long time before finally giving a slight nod. "All right," he said. "I'm willing." The penthouse kitchen hadn't been used in nearly 3 years. Liam's work schedule meant he was either never home or returned late at night, eating all his meals out. But now that Jude was back, he had rehired the private chef he'd dismissed years ago. The chef, however, had been away for too long. He had apparently forgotten the household's dietary restrictions. That evening, a platter of oysters Rockefeller appeared on the dinner table. Julian never ate oysters. An orphan raised in the gray sector, he'd been bought by a man who kept a stable of boys, feeding them whatever was cheapest. For a long period, that meant improperly stored, bottom-shelf oysters once a day. The experience had left him with a visceral, physical revulsion to them. The smell alone was enough to make him gag. When Liam saw the dish, his first instinct was to have it removed. But then a thought took hold, and he lowered his hand. He wanted to see how Jude would react. He barely touched his own food, his attention fixed on the man across the table. But he didn't see the reaction he expected. Jude didn't recoil or unconsciously avoid the oysters. His expression was placid, his gaze calm as he reached his fork toward the dish. Julian's aversion to oysters was physiological. Even with amnesia, that kind of conditioned response shouldn't have changed. There was only one explanation for this. Julian didn't have amnesia. He didn't want Liam to recognize him, so he was forcing himself to eat the one thing he couldn't stomach. Why? Just as the fork was about to touch the plate, Liam called a sharp halt. "Stop. Enough was enough." He didn't want to be recognized? Fine. Liam would play along, but he wouldn't let him torture himself. "Sir?" Jude flinched at the sudden sound, pulling his hand back as if startled. "What's wrong?" "Nothing. Just don't eat that," Liam said. "Do you remember what I told you yesterday? Julian never ate oysters. You won't either. And another thing, don't call me sir. Julian never did." Jude lowered his head. "I understand."
"I'm sorry."
He finished the rest of his meal in silence and went to his room without another word. Liam wondered if his tone had been too harsh, resolving to be gentler the next day. A short while later, there was a soft knock on his bedroom door. He got up to open it. It was Jude, as he'd expected. He was standing there in the pajamas Liam had given him, clutching a soft pillow to his chest. His dark hair fell softly over his forehead, and somehow his face, with its sharp, severe lines, managed to look utterly pathetic. "What do you want?" "It's late," Liam said, his eyes falling on the pillow. He didn't beat around the bush. "You want to sleep in here?" He sighed softly. "I told you you have your own room. You don't need to crowd in here with me." The penthouse was a duplex, over 6,000 square feet. There was more than enough space. But Jude didn't move from the doorway. "But I want to sleep with you," he asked. "Can I?" "No." Liam raised an eyebrow. "And why?" Jude hesitated for a moment before answering, the words sounding rehearsed and stiff. "I'm afraid of the dark at night. I can't sleep. Afraid of the dark." Liam said nothing, just looked him up and down. Keep lying, he thought. He had shared a bed with Julian for 7 years. Julian had never been afraid of the dark. "Can I?" Jude repeated. No, Liam refused again without a second thought. "I told you to imitate him." A small, cruel smile touched his lips. He was never afraid of the dark. For the past couple of days, Jude's attitude had been nothing but compliant, almost subservient. But this time, despite Liam's firm and merciless rejection, he unexpectedly held his ground. "But you must have slept together at night. You said I had to do everything exactly as he did." He looked at Liam. So, Jude paused, his gaze locking onto Liam's face, his voice sounding colder in the darkness of the hallway. "We should sleep in the same bed. Did you and he sleep in separate rooms?" He frowned. "I thought you said you were very close." No. Liam was momentarily speechless. Of course they hadn't slept in separate rooms. Fine. He had lost. It was like a puppy showing up at his door in the middle of the night, wagging its tail. How could he refuse? He finally relented. "You're clever, aren't you? Already learning to use my own words against me." He turned and walked toward the bed, leaving the door open. "Get in." Jude climbed into the bed with his pillow, but he was very careful, curling up on his side and taking up as little space as possible. It seemed his sleeping habits had improved in the last 3 years. He was no longer the octopus he used to be, all limbs and possessiveness, wrapping himself around Liam so tightly it was sometimes hard to breathe. Liam switched off the bedside lamp and settled in, satisfied. But the next morning, he woke up to find his initial assessment entirely wrong. He opened his eyes to find himself completely enveloped in Jude's arms, just like the old days. 2 long legs were tangled with his, an arm was clamped around his waist, the grip firm even in sleep, as if terrified Liam might vanish. Was he part octopus? Liam tried to shift slightly, but the arm around his waist immediately tightened. He managed to free one hand and gently patted Jude's face. "Get off. Time to get up." Jude's brow furrowed, and he mumbled something unintelligible, his eyes still closed. "Why are you up so early?" His voice was thick with sleep. "Let's sleep a little longer, okay?" The scene was achingly familiar, like countless ordinary mornings before everything had gone wrong. Liam looked at the face so close to his and felt a disorienting wave of nostalgia. He quickly pushed the feeling away. He gave Jude a shove. "Let go of me. I have to go to work. You can go back to sleep after I leave." Jude's eyelashes fluttered, and he slowly opened his eyes, though his gaze was still unfocused. Liam felt a small sense of relief. "You're awake. Good. Let go. I'm going to be late." He didn't let go. Instead, he propped himself up slightly, moving even closer. "What are you doing?" Liam tried to pull back. Jude wrapped an arm around his shoulders, holding him in place, and then gently brushed his lips against Liam's cheek. "What am I doing?" He whispered, a low laugh in his ear. "You said I was supposed to be your lover. I'm just doing what a lover should do." Liam's jaw clenched. The next second, his hand flew up and a sharp slap echoed in the quiet room. "You don't touch me," he said, each word a shard of ice. "Julian could. You can't. Know your place." He was so close Liam could feel his breath, their noses almost touching. He looked into his eyes, his voice frigid. "You only look like him. You're not him. Sleeping in the same bed is one thing. Anything else is crossing a line. Get off me." He was still playing the stranger, yet he already had the audacity to try and take liberties. Liam left for the office, the morning's events churning in his mind. He was so distracted that he even zoned out during a meeting, his expression so grim that his employees spent the rest of the morning tiptoeing around him like mice avoiding a cat. To spare them, he confined himself to his office. At noon, the sun was high and bright, pouring through the floor-to-ceiling windows and illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. Liam lowered his gaze and took out the silver pocket watch. 3 years ago, Julian's men had given it to him along with the news of Julian's death. He had been driving back alone from a job in the next state when his car went off a mountain road, crashing into the ravine below. The car and its occupant had supposedly been incinerated. After several search attempts, nothing was found. He had told those men he had nothing to grieve for because he wanted to project an image of indifference. But it was also because he had never believed Julian was truly dead. No body, no remains. He didn't believe it, so there was no need for mourning. The hands of the watch glinted in the sunlight. He thought of that morning inside. This couldn't continue. Now that Julian was back, were they going to keep up this charade under the same roof indefinitely? How long was he planning to play the part of a lover? Or was he planning to leave again at any moment? What had really happened to him? Why pretend not to know him? What was this ambiguous, torturous relationship they were in now? Perhaps it was time for a confrontation. But how to do it? Should he just say, "I've known you were Julian all along, you can stop acting now?" And demand to know why he was pretending? What if he continued to feign ignorance? He couldn't exactly drag him for a DNA test. Julian was an orphan from the gray sector, with no known relatives anywhere in the world. Before he could come up with a solution, the alarm on his desk chimed, reminding him of a dinner engagement that evening. In the past few years, since his father, the CEO of Hayes Corporation, had started to step back, Liam had become the de facto head of the company. Few people dared to try and get him drunk at social functions anymore. But that night, he let himself drink far more than usual. When his private driver approached to take him home, Liam waved him off. "You can go home. I'll see you tomorrow morning to go to the office." The driver looked hesitant. "But sir, tonight, I have a ride tonight," Liam said, pulling out his phone and dialing Julian's number. He had left the phone and a new SIM card for him that morning. The phone was answered before the second ring. Julian's voice came through the line. "Hello? Liam Hayes. Come and get me," he said coldly. "I'm sending you the location. If you don't show up," he paused, then added, "you can just let me die out here." He was practically carried into the penthouse. The lights from the entryway to the living room were all switched on. Julian supported him with one arm, using his other hand to shield Liam's eyes from the harsh glare. Liam still frowned in annoyance. "Turn off the lights." "Okay," he replied, and flicked the switch, leaving only a single floor lamp on in the living room. He half-carried Liam back to the bedroom and laid him on the bed. "Why did you drink so much? Is something wrong?" Liam cracked his eyes open to hear him muttering, his hand on Liam's forehead to check his temperature. "I have a lot of things wrong with me. Are you crazy?" Liam slapped his hand away. "I'm drunk, not running a fever. Get your hands off me." He leaned over Liam, his hands braced on the edge of the bed, his face very close. "I was just worried you caught a chill on the way here." "Liam," he asked softly, "do you want some water?" Liam nodded. But instead of going to get water, he placed his hands on the buttons of Liam's shirt. There is a clear line between being simply drunk and being blackout drunk. Julian was clearly testing which side of that line Liam was on tonight. After 7 years together, Julian knew exactly what Liam was like when he was completely intoxicated. He would be like a fish on a cutting board, all resistance gone, completely at his mercy. He had already unbuttoned 2 of Liam's shirt buttons and his hands were moving lower. Liam didn't stop him, but he did shift back slightly, his movements small, and looked up at him. "What are you doing?" He kept his head down, his hands not pausing. "Helping you change." "Do I need your help?" Liam retorted. "I told you not to touch me." "I'm just changing your clothes," he said, his voice softer. "I'm not trying to do anything else." Later, after a messy shower that Julian was locked out of despite his attempts to help, And after drinking the glass of warm water Julian handed him, it was already the dead of night by the time Liam was finally in bed. After he was settled under the covers, Julian quietly climbed in beside him. After a moment, he tentatively wrapped an arm around him, and when Liam didn't react, he pressed a light kiss to his cheek and rested his head on his shoulder. Time stretched on in the darkness. His body heat seeped through the thin fabric of their clothes. After a long time, so long that Liam thought he had fallen asleep, he suddenly spoke, his voice a low whisper in the dark. "Liam." He sighed. "I miss you so much." He paused. "You haven't been doing well. Have you?" "Me neither. I've missed you every single day." Liam kept his eyes closed, forcing himself to remain still. The darkness amplified everything else. Julian's hand moved to his face, his thumb gently tracing the corner of his eye. He fell silent again, and when he finally spoke, his voice was thick with unshed tears. "It's been 3 years since we've seen each other, hasn't it?" He gave a small, broken laugh. "How have you not forgotten me yet? What's the point of finding a replacement?" His fingers moved down to Liam's lips, pressing slightly as they caressed them. "No matter how much he looks like me, he's not me, Liam." Julian lowered his head, resting his forehead against Liam's. "You're an idiot. You're such an idiot. You bastard," Liam thought. "You're the idiot." He couldn't take it anymore. His eyes snapped open and he grabbed Julian's wrist in a vice-like grip. Julian looked up, stunned. "Lee, don't you dare say my name." Liam cut him off harshly. "Are you insane?" Julian frowned, looking at his wrist, held tightly in Liam's grasp. "Can't you speak properly?" "If I couldn't speak properly, I would have broken both your arms and legs and locked you in this room by now." He stared, then whispered, "I'm sorry." Liam was still furious. "You're sorry, He stopped himself mid-curse. It was useless. Lying together in bed like this was no way to have this conversation. He threw Julian's hand off him, flung back the covers, and got out of bed. He grabbed the half-full glass of cold water from the nightstand and drank it all in one go before turning back, his voice now dangerously calm. "Julian." "Yes?" "You seriously underestimate how well I know you," Liam said, his voice like ice. He sat up in bed, looking up at him. "What?" "I never for a second thought you were someone else." Liam stood over him, looking down. "The reason I brought you back from the gray sector is because the moment I saw you there, I knew it was you." Yes, his body and his demeanor had changed significantly from 3 years ago. His face and body were covered in new scars. But even so, there was no way Liam wouldn't have recognized him. "I slept in the same bed with you for 7 years. Did you really think you could just make up a name and I'd treat you like a stranger? That I'd let you crawl into my bed at night? Do you think I'm that cheap?" His outburst of anger did nothing to soften the sharp edges of his pain. A bitter ache spread through his heart. He had wanted to talk this out calmly, rationally. Julian stared at him for a long moment, his lips parting as if to speak, but no words came out. Instead, he reached out, grabbed Liam's wrist, and pulled him into his arms. Liam didn't resist, letting himself be held, resting his forehead on Julian's shoulder. After a very long time, Julian whispered, "I'm sorry, Liam. I'm so sorry. It's my fault." That night, he apologized over and over, the words "I'm sorry" a constant refrain until Liam couldn't stand it anymore. He grabbed his chin, forcing him to look at him. "Enough, Julian. Tell me why." He lowered his head, his gaze meeting Liam's. "Why what? Why didn't you come home when you weren't dead?" Liam demanded. "Why did you pretend you didn't know me?" The day he'd brought him back, he had traced the name Jude into his palm to provoke him. Julian had had 1,000 opportunities to tell him the truth, but he had said nothing. I didn't want you to worry." His arms tightened around Liam, his voice so soft it felt like it could be carried away by the wind. 3 years ago, I was in the mountains in the next state for a job. On the way back on that mountain road, the crash. It wasn't an accident. The car exploded, then went over the cliff. I managed to jump out seconds before it blew. Julian paused. Liam squeezed his hand reassuringly. But as soon as I was out of the car, I ran into my foster father's old crew. Julian's foster father was the man who had bought him from the gray sector as a child. The one who had kept him with a group of other boys and fed them nothing but spoiled oysters. 7 years ago, the man had been arrested, and Julian had testified against him in court. Though he was in prison, many of his old associates were still at large. So the crash, Liam began. They set it up, Julian confirmed. They hated me. They wanted me dead. I escaped that crash, but they caught me. I managed to get away from them later. I wanted to contact you right away, just to let you know I was alive. But by the time I had a moment to breathe, the news was already full of stories about my death. And they were watching me too closely. I was in constant danger. He squeezed Liam's hand. I thought maybe it was for the best. You'd think I was dead, you'd grieve for a while, but then you could move on with your life. It was better than getting dragged down with me. You have a good family, you're brilliant, your family values you. A bitter smile touched his lips, but there was no humor in his eyes. What am I? Why should I pull you down into hell with me? Liam, after my foster father was arrested, I really thought all that was in the past. That's why I dared to be with you. But it wasn't over. It was never over. Those people had been like a plague, impossible to get rid of. 2 years ago, the courts finally handed down my foster father's final sentence. The police also intensified their efforts to round up his remaining associates. Finally, before the end of that year, they managed to catch them all. Liam knew about that, of course. It had been major news for days. He looked at Julian. So, once the danger was gone, why didn't you come back to me? I was scared. He held Liam tighter. I was afraid that if I came back, something else would happen. If it was just me, if I died, I died. But what about you? He had eventually made his way back to the gray sector, never expecting to see Liam there. I should have left right away. But I couldn't. I kept telling myself I couldn't get close to you again, but I couldn't stop myself from following you home. I missed you so much, Liam, but I was afraid of causing you trouble. His voice dropped. Afraid of bringing danger to you. So you were afraid of bringing me danger? Liam suddenly shoved him away. He heard his own voice, unsteady and trembling. So you never planned to come back? So even when you were back under my roof, you wouldn't admit who you were? You were planning to leave again at any moment, weren't you?
I'm sorry.
You should be sorry. Liam grabbed the front of his shirt, pulling him close. You were afraid for me? Do you know why I'm still alive after 3 years without you? He stared into his eyes, feeling as if every breath was a struggle. Because I knew you weren't dead. I was waiting for you. If you had really died, do you think I could have lived on my own? The hand at his side was trembling uncontrollably. His voice cracked. Do you think I could have survived? He told Julian, his voice raw, that if the day ever came that he saw proof of his death, he would follow him straight to hell. However Julian died, he would die the same way. He was selfish and contemptible and unrepentant. He wanted all of him, and he demanded that they be together in life and in death. To the world, he was successful and powerful, but even his own family had only ever used him. In his entire life, Julian was the only one who had ever truly loved him. And he would only ever love Julian. Don't you ever think about leaving me again? Do you understand? He was still clutching his shirt, and he brought his lips close to his ear, his voice a low, possessive whisper. Or I will break your legs and keep you locked in my room. I mean it. And there are a lot of things I never told you before. He suddenly let go, his hands falling to his sides.
I'm sorry.
It's my fault. The truth is, his eyes burned, a lump forming in his throat. He had to force the last few words out. I really love you. The room was dark, the lights still off. He didn't look up, so he couldn't see the expression on Julian's face. But he felt his arms wrap around his back even tighter, pulling him in until his head was resting on his shoulder. After a long moment, Julian said, "I know." A beat of silence. "Then what about you saying you love me? Was that a lie?" Liam turned his head and bit his neck hard. "Was I lying?" "No," Julian murmured after a moment, raising a hand to cup his face. "I love you. I wasn't lying." He stroked his cheek. "Don't say anything else." Liam wanted to say more, but in the next second, Julian's hand moved to the back of his head and he kissed him. All the words he had yet to say were lost in the soft, intimate sounds that filled the darkness. He didn't know how they ended up tangled in the sheets, but when he came to his senses, Julian was on top of him. That night was a fever of desperate, reclaimed passion that didn't break until the sky began to lighten with the dawn. Afterward, Julian carried him to the bathroom to wash up. He was pliant in his arms at first, then Julian set him down in the tub. As he reached to turn on the hot water, Liam hooked a finger around his, asking sleepily, "So you're not leaving this time, right? You can't just sleep with me and not take responsibility." Julian's hand stilled. After a moment, he leaned down and pressed a kiss to Liam's forehead. "I'm not leaving," he said softly. "I'll take responsibility." 2 years later, the police busted a major international smuggling ring. The case involved enormous sums of money, a wide network of individuals, and had a profound societal impact. The primary hub for their underground transactions had been the gray sector. Following the trail, authorities finally managed to shut down what was once the city's largest black market just before the onset of winter. After this report, the morning news ended, and a science program began. The topic of the day was an astronomical term, tidal locking, a celestial phenomenon, also known as captured or synchronous rotation, occurs when the gravitational gradient makes one celestial body always face the same side toward another. For example, the moon is tidally locked with the Earth. A tidally locked body takes exactly as long to rotate around its own axis as it does to revolve around its partner. This synchronous rotation results in one hemisphere permanently facing its companion.